Ambassador Ejaz Ahmed Chaudhry Sahab, foreign guests, directors, researchers of this institute, Assalamu alaikum. I have been fascinated by think tanks all my life, and I have believed that if a country has good think tanks, the country will be going in the right direction, and if their input is taken. I've been talking to a number of think tanks, in fact all the think tanks I can reach out to, and I've been asking them this question in Pakistan: how big is your market? Because whatever you do and whatever you write and whatever you think, there must be people who are eager to absorb whatever you've done. That's lacking. Lacking because you work very hard and researchers continue, slog. But do the opinion makers and the decision makers rely on you? Or are they reading you? And who are the decision makers? For example, the parliament is the decision maker. Very small percentage of members of parliament read what you write. I am very glad that you mentioned the foreign minister. In fact, we've had a lot of discussions with the foreign minister, and his basic instinct also was in the same direction, and mine too, that I mentioned to him that you can, the foreign ministry itself, and Ejaz Sahab, you were a member of the foreign ministry, sab tismar khan hote hain ministry ke andar. Nobody needs any help. Nobody needs any ideas. We have all the ideas. Why do we have to look outside? Only who does look outside is the researcher himself. Because his training is to look outside and look for ideas. But the experts sitting in government everywhere, not in Pakistan only, everywhere, don't need a lot of input. But still, that's the gap I want to identify, and I've been trying to overcome that. And I've been trying to involve universities into this also, that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other ministries and other ministers can task a lot of research out to the universities for their students to pick up and to do research which is relevant and which reaches the corridors of power. Now, having said this, that it is very essential. A few days ago, and of course your session was about peace, and it's been difficult in my life to think about it, whether it's an illusion, what we are looking for, or it is, if not an illusion, it is elusive, an elusive dream. We are trying to grab onto it. And my experience, therefore, let me lay it down bare in front of you, because you are the people who will understand what I am saying. Maybe it's good that I am speaking in English. A lot of people will not understand it outside, but I can share it with you. I have decreasing confidence in humanity over life. I was very confident. I went to the US in 73, for example, and 73 to 75 I did my first master's in Michigan. And I was very impressed by the fact that this is a country which has made a mistake in Vietnam. And it has tremendous think tanks, and it has the courtesy between researchers, which is remarkable, that I have an opinion, but your opinion is also based on solid ground. That courtesy among research people, among people who are communicating communicating higher ideals is very important. So I thought this is the best place to be. But then there is a disappointment in humanity. What disappointment? And I'll pinpoint that out. And I spoke at the Brookings US Institute of Peace on this also, with Robin Raphael and a number of other guests, and I presented this scenario before them also. So what happened is that a generation learns and the next forgets. And throughout human history, I have not seen much of a change. I am sorry. Not much of a change. A generation learns, the next generation forgets. What was learnt in Vietnam was forgotten. And there was a chest beating for some time that, see, we made a mistake in Vietnam, the Soviets will learn from Afghanistan. And see, we have learned. Didn't happen like that. There were new ventures, there were new encroachments into peaceful areas, and it disappoints me further that the whole world is taken for a fool also at the same time. Why? Because Europe, after the 30 years war and 100 years war, people decided to accept the Westphalian order that we must control the power of the gun and the nation state. And from that emerged, after a few wars, from that there emerged the League of Nations and the concept of a nation state, where it was decided that the arms can be carried only by the state itself and not by individuals. So that was the determination, trying to manage a force, trying to manage arms as an issue of conflict. So the focus came away from the human mind to an object, which is fine, because that's what we are told these days, that if you want to communicate well, take out the issue away from personalities and bring it down to an issue. So fine, that was a good judgment, that it was taken away from human minds and brought down to management of arms. And what did Europe learn? Europe learned that there is misery in war. Misery. Europe was devastated by the fate of the children, and therefore UNESCO, the United Nations institutions subsequently were formed in 1947, I think, for the child, because they had seen the misery. So all this was the order inherited from the Westphalian order. But then I have seen the same thing continue to happen. And by the leaders of the world, by the leaders who had all the information, think tanks, which anybody could afford. All opinion generated not by one mind, but by hundreds and thousands of minds. Imagine my disappointment with think tanks, therefore, also. If the United States has all the input from these brilliant minds, has made so much success in the world, how can these minds encourage the United States to go into Afghanistan and stay in Afghanistan for 20 years and spend $2.3 trillion in Afghanistan? Must be very smart minds. Something is missing in this whole scenario. Like I said, the concept was removed from the human minds to the arms. So I want to drag it back to the human mind. And that's what was my thesis, if you can call it a thesis, when I talked at the United States Institute of Peace. What is the human mind like? What are you seeing happen today? The human mind is a testosterone-driven, DNA modified for 10,000 years, resistant to, susceptible to his or her hormones. Rationality finally gets to decide with the mix of hormones and the mix of emotions which come around with that. And what are the emotions which make decisions then? It's not a super intelligence or an artificial intelligence or a Tesla car which is making decisions. It's the human minds. So the human mind has three basic tenets which make you and me. One is love, and it is across all nations on earth, all people. If you see a lovely child here making innocent gestures, all of us will love those gestures. It goes across nations. Love for a woman, love for a man, love for your children, love for your parents. This is a trait of the human mind which is there, hardwired into us. The other is hatred, and it is equally strong. Hatred of the other person. And how that gets interpreted? By our clumsy means of communication. Within our families you can see that. Within your families, you don't have to go out. Every day, I say something, my wife thinks about something else. She says something, every day it happens. Yesterday she messaged my son something and I immediately said that he will misconstrue it in this manner. That's the human mind. It happens every day to all of us. And based on that, you see, the best laboratory is you yourself. Now we are smart enough to run organizations and then nations. But the best laboratory, you run nations the way you run your own life. The way you all deal with each other and the way I deal with myself and my families. So there is love and there is phobias. And a misinterpretation of communication. Every day it happens. And I'm surprised at society itself, It's I will go in a different direction, but let me mention that I've called that as a out of context journalism and relationships. The whole television media is an out of context, champion of out of context communication. That is true between us also. If somebody wants to drive a wedge between me and somebody else, he picks up out of context things and says that. And let me narrate to you directly an incident of 5 days ago. I had gone to Turkmenistan and I was talking about Afghanistan. And the president I was talking to was so influenced by the WhatsApp messages coming out of Afghanistan, of what the Taliban were doing in Afghanistan, that I kept on telling him, but then what is the solution? And he would say, war is not the solution. But then he was so critical. Imagine the most liberal person in Pakistan society writing against the Taliban and everything else. And here I had a president of a country who was thinking on the same lines. And I kept on telling, and he would then again go on, Keji, so many murders took place, this happened and that happened, and I would say, what's the solution? And he would again say, war is not the solution. So what is the solution? If I am going to be led by hatred, how can I find a solution? So this is only 5 days ago, and in context when you're talking about peace in this region. It's difficult to achieve, it's difficult to acquire because personalities and minds are not ready to distill emotions away and look at reality. That's the effort which is being made throughout, but it is not going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to happen. So therefore, for me, the crisis is there. What is the crisis? Yesterday's war, which the Prime Minister, I am glad he made such an important statement. The Prime Minister said that the world is going back into the Cold War. The world is going back into the Cold War, and that's a crisis. And I can't understand why can't the world get together, because it's a very risky world today. A lot of you would be thinking, I forget, I read books, but then I forget the authors, etc. A lot of you are aware of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Achha ji, how many of you are aware that during that crisis, a nuclear explosion took place? Is somebody aware? Yes. Actually, 4 explosions took place. Imagine, the world didn't know that, the world doesn't know that, most of the people in the world. 4 explosions took place. Why? Because there was a physicist who had postulated a theory that imagine the human mind, developing a theory like the mad doctrine. What was that? Mutually assured destruction. Make so many bombs to ensure the second strike ability, the third strike ability, the fourth strike ability, and the compassion of humanity never came into their minds. What are you doing? But the phobia is the other guy is making bombs. You see, can't get out of this vicious cycle of the human mind. So if you were to establish resolution to a situation, it has to start from the human mind. And I have a suggestion, I will come to that. But anyhow, 4 atomic blasts took place. 2 around Antarctica and 2 around the Soviet Union. And the physicist idea was that if an atomic explosion takes place in space, the ionization or polarization of the particles will therefore would not allow other missiles to come in and enter the Earth, and they would be destroyed by that polarization. It was called either the Christensen effect or something similar to that, and that was the name of the scientist. And you are also aware how close did humanity come around to detonating nuclear weapons. How close? It's just an accident, it didn't happen. It's not an accident didn't happen, it's just an accident which didn't happen. Could have happened. Very close. The narrative of the Soviet submarine where the captain of the ship received information from his instruments that launchings have taken place, and he was under orders to launch nuclear missiles from his ship, and either his assistant or he refused to follow the protocol. So we were saved in that instance, and we have been saved a bundle of times. There are so many incidents, all of you researchers would be very well aware. So what I am saying is that this love-hate phobia will keep on modifying the human instinct and what will happen. Imagine, let me make a statement which I believe in today, that countries need enemies to nurture their phobias, and then subsequently the nation is also fed the same mixture and same dialogue to convince their minds. Whether it is the Red Indians, and the media and the entertainment industry also follows the same thing, whether it's the British who were then thrown out of United States, or whether it's the Nazis, whether it's the Russians, and every era you can remember, it's about 10, 15, 20 years, whether it's the Russians, whether it's the Islamic terrorists and Islamic jihadism, and whether it's China today. It's just a direction of the human, of the mind battle tank or gun, from one phobia to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, making the world more uncertain at every step. Today it is bigger than the nuclear this situation. The dangers far exceed that. You need cooperation in climate change. The world doesn't find it in itself to cooperate, because it is being dragged. You need commitment towards humanity to reduce poverty. The world doesn't see that. The decision makers don't see that. It is the NGOs who are running, while the schism is getting bigger, while the crack is getting wider. It is the NGOs who come in and try to cross that gap. I made a decision in 30, 40 years ago. I made a decision that I wanted to be part of I had applied to establish a medical and dental college in 1975. And when, in 88, when the democratic government came back, the first permission was given to me. And between my passion in 75 to establish a medical and dental college, and the fact that I didn't want to be a money-making venture, I wanted to teach, etc., etc. That passion ended in 14 years when I got permission, 75 to 88. So what happened? I made a decision that whatever good I do in society, there is bad politics which is happening at the same time. So it's a futile battle. That I start doing good, Idris Saab's doing good, Imran Khan doing good as SKMT, and meanwhile the country's decision makers are widening the gap between the rich and the poor, and the situation is getting worse. So I made a decision that I won't do that. But you have very great people in society today who are trying, Bill Gates, trying to do whatever they've earned, trying to invest back into society. At the same time, a report came out 3-4 days ago in which one of the authors was Thomas Piketty, whose first book was Capital in the 21st Century in 2013, and the second book was Capital and Ideology in 2018. And he's saying the difference between the rich and poor is getting bigger and bigger. It leads to a lot of frustration. So, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, there are philosophers who can predict. There's a researcher, there's a philosopher, there's a ruler, and there's the executive, and there's the United Nations. So every forum has different points of view. Philosophers are predicting that the human DNA-based race does not have a long time to live, because the DNA changes take place in thousands of years, while the silicon-based DNA changes in seconds and days. So therefore, the ultimate, and let me mention to you, Yuval Noah Harari in *Sapiens* and Homo Deus, or even Stephen Hawking in his last book talked about the fact that the human race is under terrible danger, and it is under danger because it is the human race. It is in danger because of its inherent qualities as a human race. It is in danger because we have not learnt, and maybe I am disappointed whether we can learn it or not. So what is the way forward? Either you can live in the disappointment which I am talking about, or there is a way forward. Let me tell you, and I'm not very particular, specific, unfortunately, you spread the board of deliberations so big. I would love to talk on Afghanistan and what is happening, and AUKUS and Quad and the reorientation. You remember there's a word used which was a toy, which is a kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope actually was a toy. Now it's just a word, in which as children we would look into it, and the pieces, as you rotated it, the pieces of glass would fit in different dimensions and give a different picture every time you rotated it. So that's what is happening in the world today, because the kaleidoscope has turned and there's a new orientation of the pieces of glass, of political glass in the world. But there must be a way out. There must be a solution, at least for me to understand. There cannot be depression all over, but the whole thing is restarting. And it is a desperation. I can't seem to understand what will I do if, for example, your dream comes true, and if the leaders of the polarizing world stand before you, and you would try and convince them. And I gave you one example of the president of a country only 5-6 days ago, that whatever I did, and I exchanged my opinion with the Prime Minister, and he agreed with my opinion of the gentleman. So what would you do trying to convince them? Because people don't change. You and I don't change. The Prime Minister sent me a video, a TED talk, in which it was about people refusing to rethink in their lives. At your and my ages, it is almost impossible to rethink. But a major rethink needs to be done. What do I dream about? Therefore, the major rethinking. I have, after having said all this, and after having realized in the past few years more the fact that the new kind of war is going to be very dehumanizing, is going to be based on artificial intelligence and small drones, and maybe one pilot with about 200 drones as his wingmen going around with him. I would suggest to you a book by the name of this, published in 2021, by the name of I, Warbot by Payne, or Keane, I think the similar name, and The Spoils of War by Mr. Cockburn, two books which I have read recently but published this year only. And I am further worried about the fact that the new kind of war will be very dehumanizing. Asimov said that the war machine, the drone machine, he laid down 3 principles for a drone, for a killer robot, for example, 3 principles. One was that for a robot in war, one was that you don't kill. The second one was, if you have any doubts about anything, the first principle you don't forego, etc. But today, the new thinking is that all these drones should be able to kill, but not my people, other people. So it should make a determination. Only the differentiation that this is this person is loyal to me, he does not need to be killed, somebody else has to be killed. And hundreds and thousands of them can be released. Recent wars have pointed out to some kind of drone warfare like that. But what is the solution? My solution, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that as long as there is there's another power which is coming up, which is beyond our perceptions right now, but it is accumulating and gaining in health and wealth, and that is the power of the new media. Power of the new media. Remember, the power of the old media was not as bad. It was very strong because it convinced us about the weapons of mass destruction. It convinced the most literate of societies on weapons of mass destruction, where there were none. And it caused devastation throughout the world. Tremendous devastation. And these sanctions, for example, when Iraq was under sanctions and of medical supplies and medical goods, there was a study done by Harvard that 200,000 people, children died more because of sanctions had there not been any sanctions. So these sanctions are another devastating effect. Whether they are going to stay in Afghanistan or not, you can imagine. Imagine the countries which are trying to teach us humanitarianism, are trying to teach us compassion, are so blind that the fate of women and children becomes a concern as soon as you leave the country. But while bombings are going on, everything is being hidden, while women and children are being killed in wars. But a major decision was done that in Europe we won't fight wars. We won't. We won't devastate our own people and our own countries. All the tests and all the judgments and all the everything has to be done somewhere else. Let me not go on that because that's again a very long story of depression and of devastation in lands of the poor. But the solution is that as long as vested interest drives international organizations and international relationships, I think that will always override morality. It will override Kashmir. It will override the situation in India. Whatever happens to the Muslims, as long as India is an economic power, you tend to ignore that. So the world is looking for, and the only solution in the world is a morality-based international order. Only. Nothing else. Because every new world order is from one direction or the other direction, talking about their own interests. Everything was free. Colonialism plundered India, take away all the goods. That was the norm, that was fine. Neo-colonialism, it continued to happen. The Prime Minister of Pakistan talked about the money laundering and wealth accumulation of the poor world into all these tax havens which were the gods of capitalism, like Switzerland, and you mentioned that. And it happened only until 10, 20 years ago, not too long ago. So what morality? No morality it is a morality when it wants to subdue weapons. For example, regime change, because we think democracy is not there. And regimes which had no democracy were irrelevant as long as they were with us. So therefore, a new order which is based on morality is the need of the times. I don't know whether humanity can rise towards it, but it has to. If it wants to survive, there are tremendous changes happening in genetics, in CRISPR technology, what kind of people we might start creating. Hitler tried to mix and match people for a superhuman race. Today, the genetic addition of things can be able to create a superhuman race, or a cyborg relationship with the computers, or a super intelligence. Nick Bostrom has written about super intelligence. All these things, the dangers in the world are bigger today than ever before. Don't think that nuclear weapons were the only danger. Nuclear weapons are still managed better. but the kinds of weapons which can be unleashed by non-state actors. These are small things. Did you know that in California, on a test run, flying of F-16 pilots, 5 human pilots were defeated by simulated AI developed by a small company. The new war is about cyber. The new war is cyber defense. The new war is cyber offense. All this brick and mortar defense which we are talking about will become irrelevant in a very short period of time. So, ladies and gentlemen, please don't think in the errors of the 20th century. Today, errors are not even decades long. Errors and total change in philosophy and approach can happen in years, in 1 or 2 years or 3 years. So therefore, the challenge is huge. And who best to take us out from there than the think tank, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. So ladies and gentlemen, with that dream and hope that you can salvage us, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.